Welcome to OurSport. I'm your host, Larry. My son, John, is doing the recording and all the editing. Week 5 of the 2019 college football season's in the books. We're going to recap some of it in a minute. As always, we'd love for you to watch our inaugural episode. It's in the link below. Lets you know a little bit about what we're all about. And we'd love for you to subscribe, and after you do, turn on that little bell for notifications. We'd love to have your viewership. Before we get into a recap of some of what went on, the season so far has gone to chalk. Things have been the way they're supposed to be. Despite Clemson's close call, we have not had the big upset yet. I do feel like it's coming. And there is some movement in our top 10, which we'll get to later on. But I think this is a good time to talk about coaches outside of the rankings who are doing a great job, outside of the top 20, top 25. Coaches who are not getting a lot of national attention. Let's start with our first one. Sonny Dykes at SMU. Now, Sonny Dykes' dad, Spike, he was also a college football coach and a legendary one. He had a long affiliation, Spike did, with Texas high school football. And because of this, he ended up coaching at Texas Tech. And he was a kind of an innovator even before Mike Leach got there. He coached 13 years, only had 3 losing seasons, beat Texas 6 times, went to the Cotton Bowl, won a conference in '94. And even back then, he was doing some things with tempo. He had quarterbacks, Debbie Lethridge, and he'd go under center. As soon as he got under center, the ball would be snapped immediately. And he was a little bit ahead of his time. He was inventive. So this is what Sonny grew up under. His dad was a high school coach in Texas, a long time affiliation with the high schools, then went to Texas Tech. So his entire career, when Sonny was brought up, learning from his dad, this is what he, had an affinity for almost. So Sonny goes to Louisiana Tech. He has good success there for 3 years, 22 and 15. Regionally, it's of course close to Texas, and he has ties he can exploit in terms of recruiting, a network that his father had built up that he could use. And then he makes a strange decision. He goes to Cal, to the Golden Bears. And you probably cannot find anywhere 2 more dichotomous kind of situations than Texas football and Cal Berkeley. So the emphasis on football is not as strong there. They do want to win. He had to take the job. It's a Power 5 job. You're going from Louisiana Tech. Texas wasn't open. Where his dad coached, Texas Tech wasn't open. And so Cal is a much higher level of jobs in terms of prestige than Louisiana Tech. And he goes there, and right off the bat, it's a bad fit. If you ask people in Texas in college to invest in your program, they will invest in your program. If you ask the donors to participate, they're going to back up the money truck almost anywhere, and they're going to help you build as much as you can in terms of facilities. So he goes to Cal, and their facilities are substandard, even by Pac-12 standards. So every coach tries to do this, tries to get indoor practice fields or tutorial centers for their students, the football players. And when he tries to do this here, they have to cut trees down at a certain part to have new construction, and they've got hippies in the trees. Hippies in the trees who are like, you can't cut this tree down. That doesn't happen in Texas. That happens at Cal Berkeley. So it's all this litany of things he has to deal with, and culturally, it just felt like a bad fit right off the bat. So his first year there, he has no success on the field. They go 1-11. But he has a hotshot freshman quarterback named Jared Goff. And you could see kind of what they're building. Their problems, they were making hay on offense, they ran a spread, but their defense was atrocious. The next year, Goff's a sophomore, their defense goes from atrocious to just bad, or almost mediocre. They go 5-7, and the offense gets even better. There's kind of a linear progression on both sides of the ball. The offense is ahead of the defense, but the defense is improving. The year after that, they're just kind of an average defense. Goff is at his peak. They go 8-5. They win their bowl game convincingly, and you can see that he's starting to establish a program despite all the things in his way, despite all the roadblocks he has, and he has them. So the next year, they lose Jared Goff. This is not the normal Cal quarterback that goes to the NFL. This is the #1 pick in the draft. And a player like that, his production is hard to replace. At USC, you could replace it. It's almost impossible to replace it at Cal. So they don't crater. They go 5-7. They slip. Sonny is, still trying to build that program up. It's going to take time at a place like that, and they fire him. They fire him too quickly. It was as much an issue of how he fit in as anything else, and probably fired unfairly. So, Sonny goes to become an analyst for a year, and then he goes to take the vacant SMU job. Now, SMU is a perfect fit for him. SMU has, they're based in Dallas. He's familiar with the culture there. He's familiar with Texas high school football. His recruiting ties, of course, they can easily exploit those, and the coaches there want to work with them. The local players are invested in the sport, the culture of Texas high school football. And right off the bat, he coaches the bowl game as an interim. They lose. He coaches last year. They go 5-7. They go to Michigan in a big house. James Prochet, the receiver, gives Michigan fits, and you can kind of see what's going on that he's building. This year, Sonny is off to 5-0. 5-0 at SMU. They go down to South Florida, and they smoke South Florida. That should not happen. South Florida should have a lot more talent than SMU. Of course, Charlie Strong is struggling at South Florida. That game should not be 41-7 after 3 quarters. SMU leading. That should never happen. SMU is not built to that point, and USF should never be that down. So now you look at them. They're more of a rushing team. He runs a spread, but they've got a highly heralded quarterback, Shane Buechele, a Texas transfer, but they've got an unheralded running back, Xavier Jones, and they're more of a running team than a passing team. Prochet's still there at receiver. They've got a couple of good receivers. And if you look at their schedule, Tulsa coming up. They should win that. Temple's a good team. They could win that at home. You could see where they could win that easily. Then they have at Houston. Houston is crippled because of the whole De'Ara King fiasco. And so you're talking about a team that could potentially be 8-0 when they travel to Memphis, which might be the best team in that conference. I hope they beat. I'm not against Temple by any means, but I hope they beat Temple just for the drama of it, because in that case they probably would go 8-0 against what's probably going to be an undefeated Memphis team for a showdown in that division in the AAC. Sonny Dykes doing a great job at SMU. And you cannot minimize the impact of the win they had 2 weeks ago against TCU. TCU has been so far ahead of them for 20 years since Gary Patterson got there. They were really on equitable terms for the longest time in the Southwest Conference. SMU did have that run with the Pony Express. Before that, they were kind of the same program for the longest time. TCU lapped them and got well ahead of them to the point where they could beat a team like Texas and Oklahoma, and they did. SMU was not even in their ballpark. And for SMU to win that rivalry game a few weeks ago, that was a major step forward for them. They're not as talented as TCU. And in terms of everything associated with both of those programs, that is hard to minimize, the impact of that win. So, I love the job that Sonny's doing there. That's not going to be the only person we talk about. Our next coach, Dave Clawson, current head coach at Wake Forest. Now, Clawson's been coaching 20 years. His record overall is fine as an overall record, 123, 115. If you look at Wake Forest, he's been there, this is his 6th year, 33 and 35. Not impressive on the surface. But you have to look at everywhere he's been, everywhere he's taken over, starting with Fordham, they were a disaster. He never went into any ready-made situation, had an established program, and got to take it over. Everywhere he's been, they were terrible when he got there. And Clawson does things the right way. He will go in and he will try to redshirt his entire class. He will try to develop players. Player development is big at Wake Forest. They play fifth-year seniors. I don't know if you have a choice at a place like that. So in between, if you look right here, you can see his record, and this is kind of an example of what I'm talking about, of what he inherited in his first year and what he did by the time he left. In between the Richmond and Bowling Green job, Clawson had a gig as Tennessee's offensive coordinator, and it did not go well, and he became kind of the fall guy. They kind of made fun of his offense, the claw fence, and the claw fence is not a joke now. People respect it. And for him to go to somewhere like Wake Forest, Wake Forest is an academic powerhouse. That's the place you want to send your kid to go to law school, not necessarily for football. Have a very small enrollment, and with a very small enrollment becomes a very small alumni base, which is a very small donor pool. You also have academic requirements that you have to overcome to get players in here. You have lack of tradition. And this, North Carolina has been considered now a burgeoning state, a larger influx of players you can recruit from. That's fine. There are 7 FBS schools in North Carolina, however. And Wake Forest is going to lose most of the recruiting battles to North Carolina, NC State, maybe even Duke. So he has all these obstacles against him, and despite all that, he's 5-0 now at Wake Forest this year. He's been building to this, got a good-looking quarterback, Jamie Newman. This is a big kid who can play. He's got some big receivers to work with. And if you look at their upcoming schedule, they have a bye this week. They get a home game against a very down Louisville team. They get a home game after that against Florida State. Florida State has more talent than them. I don't know if that matters. Florida State has more talent than a lot of teams they lose to lately. And they're going to be at home, and that's going to be a coaching edge for Wake Forest, without a doubt. I could see them winning those games. After that, they have a bye. Then they have another home game against NC State. NC State's well coached by Dave Doran. Wake Forest could win this game. We're talking hypotheticals, of course, but it's fun to look at hypotheticals like this. And after that, they play their first road game. From this filming till November 9th, they don't play a road game. And that road game is November 9th at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's in terrible shape, just got blown out by Duke. So it's conceivable, playing theater of the mind, this team could be 9-0 November 16th, almost toward the end of the season, when they go to Clemson. There's no way they should beat Clemson. And it's possible, of course, that they're not even 9-0. But it's fun to look ahead. And if I were a coach, if I were an athletic director looking for a coach to build a program, I would seriously look at Clawson. Because I wonder what he would do if he had a place with immense resources. He's on the opposite end of the spectrum now. You talk about somewhere like USC. Imagine Dave Clawson at USC, where he does not have a student enrollment of 4,000 or a donor base, a booster base that it's very small, or a culture that perhaps is not fully invested in football. I wonder what he could do there. This is one of the better coaches in America. He's been so for a long time. His record does not reflect it overall. But if you look at the context of the programs he were and where he took them over, he's been a program builder. Always took over a bad program, never stepped into one ready to be taken over right off the bat and have immediate success. And Dave Clawson, one of the premier coaches, maybe the premier coach in the ACC.
Wait a minute!
One of the best coaches in the country. And on OurSport, John appears for the first time in a real segment, other than the thing we talked about, Danny Dimes, who does look pretty good, I gotta admit. You want to talk about what?
I want to talk about the team right here, Oklahoma, specifically Lincoln Riley and their quarterbacks and what he's doing over there. It's nothing sort of magic. He's taking guys and churning them out. We have 3 years, 2 Heisman winners. Jalen Hurts this year looks incredible.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
These guys come in as transfers. The last 3, Baker, Kyler, and Jalen, all transfers. And they just get much better when they come there, and they just start putting out these massive numbers.
Is there a way we could knock him for any reason?
His defenses are not great, but he's an offensive mastermind. And his offenses are consistently the best in the country. They're putting up the best stats, not just in passing, but in rushing as well. They have the highest yards per carry right now, I think 9.2.
It's ridiculous.
So I think a lot of it stems from the offensive line. Because his offensive line play is consistently very, very good. Last year, they had a lot of returning starters. They were projected to be a very good offensive line, but this year they lost a lot.
They won the Joe Moore Award last. Joe Moore is the best offensive line in the country. They won that last year. Yeah.
And this year, they're still a very good offensive line.
A great offensive line.
Even after losing those guys, you see Jalen Hurts, they haven't played a lot of stiff competition, but he's still sitting there for 6, 7 straight seconds on end, just looking the field, basically sitting up there with the lawn chair. And then opening the run game up. The defense is backed off, and they create these huge cavernous holes on the offensive line where they just blow people off the line of scrimmage, and it's really incredible the offensive line play he's able to get out of his team.
Their center's great, one of the best in America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the quarterbacks are incredible, the offensive line is great, and everything he's doing over there on the offensive side of the ball is spectacular, but his defenses are really holding him back. And so are they truly, could they make a run for the national title? Could they beat Clemson? Could they beat Bama? Because last year, the defense was a question about the entire year. They were giving up large amounts of points to smaller teams.
Right.
And then they got their pants pulled down in the semifinals game against Bama.
The Orange Bowl, I think.
The Orange Bowl, yeah, the semifinal. And could they change that? Could they do better this year than last year?
What if this? You know, they scored like crazy in the Orange Bowl once they got down 28-0. They've never seen a defense like that. The closest thing to the NFL in terms of defense that you're going to find in college is that Alabama defense. And they took a quarter to get shell-shocked. And Bama got up on them 28-0. From that point on, they kind of outscored them. What if now they get used to it? Maybe their defense doesn't have to be perfect.
Maybe they can put up points.
Yeah.
Maybe they can do those things.
And can we find a kind of a silly criticism for Lincoln Riley like this? He's never recruited and developed his own quarterback.
Nope, never has.
But it might not matter because every quarterback in America would want to come play for him.
Exactly.
And all his quarterbacks are throwing to first-round receivers, Marquise Brown, C.D. Lamb, all these guys. But I guess Jalen Hurts, Tua, I should say, throwing to first-round receivers. Trevor Lawrence is doing the same thing. Okay, well, I mean, Texas is out of this conversation for the playoff, I think, because Texas lost to LSU. They have to beat Oklahoma twice, basically. Assume Oklahoma gets the season they're supposed to. They have to beat them in Red River and beat them in a conference championship, or else they'll have 2 losses. Can Texas beat Oklahoma twice?
No, I don't think so. Sam Ehlinger's doing good things for Texas. They got in a shootout against LSU and lost. And in these shootout kind of games, the Big 12 football, it can really go either way a lot of the times because each team is just putting up touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. Oklahoma consistently is used to this kind of play and wins it. Texas does the same, but they lost to an SEC team. They played the shootout game against a team that doesn't do that, and they still lost. So I don't think maybe one time, but not twice.
That's Oklahoma's comfort zone, are these kind of games.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's like if you have to think that when it's like teams that try to outrush like the Dallas Cowboys. It's like, okay, you're playing our style of game. We just do it better than you. You want to play like we do, and you want to get in a shootout against Oklahoma. They're almost eager for it.
Oh yeah. Oh, they want to. They want to.
Okay. What's final verdict? What's Oklahoma going to do this year?
This year, I think Oklahoma's ready. I think Jalen Hurts, his mechanics look a lot better. He looks much improved. And number one thing, he's determined. He wants to prove that he is an NFL quarterback and that he stands up to the likes of Tua and Trevor Lawrence. I think they get into the games against Alabama, and he's clutch. He goes in there and does what he's supposed to do. And I think they have a really good chance of doing some damage if they get into the top 4.
He is determined to play Oklahoma. The word is that's what he's motivated on is playing Oklahoma. And that'd be a great playoff game, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. That's John for our segment for Our Sport. Say goodbye, boy.
Bye.
So, if you look at our current top 10, the Our Sport top 10, you'll see some movement, if you notice, from last week to this week. And the thing that you have to keep in mind is that last year is not this year. Clemson is on this massive winning streak, but this year's Clemson team, you can't judge this year's Clemson team, how good they are, by how good last year's were, because there's been so much turnover. That entire defensive line got drafted to the NFL. Trevor Lawrence is not playing to the level that he was last year, this year. He's already thrown interceptions, more interceptions this year than he did in the entirety of the 2018 season. So I'm even a little reluctant having Clemson at 4. Ohio State has moved up because they're just killing teams. They're going on the road against Nebraska. Nebraska's not a top 20 team, but they completely manhandle them in that environment. That is a difficult environment, if nothing else, against a well-regarded offensive coach, and they handle them on both sides of the ball. So you'll see some movement here. A team can win in our top 10 and still drop because how you win or how you lose matters. And this is why Georgia is out of our top 6. We had this clearly established tier, we thought, of top 6 teams, and everybody else was out of it. The way Auburn's been playing, Auburn's faced a very difficult schedule, I think the most difficult in the country so far. And there's something about Georgia in big games. There's kind of a pucker factor. There's something about this coach I don't trust in a big game. He seemed like he was almost trying to give the Notre Dame game away at the end. So this is our current top 10. 1, 2, 3. Those teams look almost a slight notch above everybody else. We thought about putting LSU ahead of Clemson. This will change throughout the year. We can't wait for these teams to play each other. So thanks for joining us this week. If you want to join our Facebook page, it's OurSport College Football. If you want to contact us through email, it's oursport150@gmail.com. And we'd love for you to subscribe. If you do, turn on that little bell for notifications. And we'll be with you next week. Thanks for joining us.